Python functions. A function is a block of organized, reusable code that is used to perform a single related action. Functions provide better modularity for your application and a high degree of code reusing. So let's create our first Python function. To create a function in Python, you have to use the keyword def, which is short for define, but you say def. Def followed by the name of the function. So let's call this function let's call it greet, followed by the brackets, then a colon. Then inside, when I say inside, when you drop down, you use your tab, you can now have your block of code. So this function is going to greet us with hello world. Save. If I run this, nothing happened because all we've done is just to declare this function. The next step is to call the function. So after you've defined a function, if you want to run it, then you have to call it. So how do you call a function? You call it by its name, greet. Remember, this function was created as greet. So to call it, you have to call it with greet. And let's run this now. And as you can see, it says hello world because we have successfully called this function by saying greet, print hello world, and greet. Now, this function is very basic. Well, what can you do to make it a bit functional, so to speak? We use parameters. So parameters are like variables. So they act like variables that you send into the function so that you can use them inside of the function. So if I say fname, or let me say name, if I pass this parameter name, it means that when I call this function, I also need to pass an argument that is going to be the value of this variable. So, because if I run this now, there will be an error. And why is that? Because our function currently collects a parameter, but I did not send in an argument. So if I send in argument, maybe I use my name, Precious, this should work. You see, our function works, okay? But then, how can we use this name that I've sent in here inside this function? It's simple, because right now, anything you send inside here is currently available. So I will just use name. So hello world, Precious. So if I run this, what do we have? Hello world, Precious. If I change this to Kim or Kimberly, clear the output, and I run this, you can see hello world, Kimberly. Also, it can accept more than one parameter. So name, country. That means I also have to pass the 2 here. So I have to pass the country for Kimberly to Nigeria. So if I say hello world, Kimberly, then I could do something like saying you are from country. So let's run this. Hello world, Kimberly, you are from Nigeria. Now, there is something we call default value. So what if every time you may not pass a value, but sometimes you may want to pass a value? Then you can assign a default value to your parameter. So I could assign a default value of Nigeria to this parameter. And if I save this and I change this from Nigeria to, let's say, Uganda, save, clear output. If I run this, you see, hello world, Kimberly, you are from Uganda, because I passed Uganda here. But what if I did not pass Uganda? Save. What would happen? Let's run it. Hello world, Kimberly, you are from Nigeria. So you see, the essence of using the default value is In case you did not pass the argument, it will fall back to the default value in the function. Let's comment this out. Now, something else we need to know is that a function can return a value. But before we do a return value, I want to show you something, the pass statement. So let's assume we want to create a function that adds numbers. And since we are adding number, we can have num1 and num2. What if we are yet to run this code? Like we are yet to decide what this code would do. If we run this function, imagine you have this in a program. You're going to have a problem because there is nothing inside of the function. But if you use the pass statement, then you can leave it like this and it's going to skip it. See, there is no longer any error. So you can use the pass statement to ignore a function. All right, that's what I wanted to show you. Now we want to talk about the return statement. In the next video, we'll talk more about parameters and arguments, but I just did a simple introduction. So now I have two parameters in add numbers, num1 and num2. So what do we want this to do? We want it to do the sum. So we'll create a new variable called sum. Then it should add num1 to num2. And after doing that, it should return sum. Like like I said, if we want to call this function, all we need to do is say add numbers, right? Then we pass the numbers to it, maybe 5 and 10. If we run this, you see there is no output. The reason for this is because we are returning the sum. If I comment out return and I run this function, you see it's still the same thing. So sum is this, add numbers, then print sum. Now the reason why you return it is so that you can use the value at any time. You can use the value at any time, not just when the function runs. So because of this, we can actually assign this to a variable, or you can print it directly. So we can say print clear output and run 15. So you see, anytime the function runs, we can decide to do anything we want with the value when we use the return statement. So return statement makes the result of a function, it makes it available for you to use at any point in your program. So like I said, we can even assign it to a variable, and we can say results is equal to the function, and now we can print, we can say the sum is results. Save. And as you can see, the sum is result, because we use the return statement to make the value available, and we can use it at any stage in time. So instead of using the function in the print statement, you can assign it to a variable like result, and you can use it anytime you want inside of your program. So this is it on Python function, and we've been able to talk about defining a function and calling the function. Also, we talked about assigning parameters and also passing arguments. We also talked about using the pass statement and also how to use the return statement. So, see you in the next video.